For many years, I've been asked by parents of high school students and grade school students, especially in my time at home in Pennsylvania, but also around the country because I'm known by people to be a professor of literature. And I'm known by people to have knowledge and be able to do memory work, because I probably know 1,000 poems by heart or something like that if I thought, I don't know exactly the number, but some large number of that kind. And many passages of Latin and many passages of Greek and things that other people don't know. For whatever that's worth, it impresses people because most people do not remember much. We're not in the age of memory. If memory was the mother of the muses, then the muses are in trouble now because people don't remember. But I'm asked by parents and by sometimes even by other teachers. I've been asked this by grade school teachers that I've met in random situations. What are the most important skills which kids need, which children need, if they are going to, increase their cognitive powers substantially and be able to deal with difficult material and grow into knowledge? What do they have to do? Now, of course, there's two things that are too obvious to even be mentioned to a normal human being. One is they have to learn mathematics, because it's the most perfect deductive system. It's the most coherent logical device that the human mind has ever constructed or recognized or discovered, however you want to think about it. Mathematics first. It's something that should be learned in first grade and second grade and third grade and fourth grade, and increased in difficulty and precision as all the years go by, because it's nobody can increase their cognitive powers without as much mathematical knowledge as they can gain. I always wish I knew more about set theories and about number systems and about complex algebras and all the other topology and all the other branches of mathematics that I haven't had time to master or consider. So that, you got to say that. That's like saying, that's like the weather. It's something you can't deny. It happens. After that, it has to do with reading. But not just reading, because people forget there's also talking. Talking is an extension of our intellectual life, which should never be underestimated. So in my mind, there are three things that are most valuable to learn in childhood and to internalize and to remember. One is mathematical ideas, the second is poetry, and the third is argument, the structure of argument. I think if those three things are mastered while we learn to read and while we learn to talk, our cognitive powers can grow and grow and grow over a lifetime. Now, what am I saying? Well, poetry, although it's not at this moment terribly popular, is one of the most fundamental human territories. What do I mean by that? Let's think about it. People who say, I don't like poetry, actually do like poetry. Because if they do not like to read book poems in a tradition of poetry, if they don't want to read Milton and they don't want to read Shakespeare, they still want to listen to hip hop, which is very complex street poetry. They still want to listen to pop songs, which in the great era, which was 63 or 4 to 75 or 6, had great artists, verbal artists, Neil Young, Lennon McCartney, Smokey Robinson, great verbal artists, poets, essentially. And the musical thing is just a rhetorical framing for the statements of the songs. And people love those songs because they like poetry. There's rhyme, there's rhythm, there's repetition of meter. They like, And a lot of people you meet in your class, like in my days in New York, you'd meet a kid who played guitar and learned to sing songs, and he'd be a better reader For that reason, than almost anybody else in the class, when you read a poem by Frost or Eliot or Wordsworth or Pope. That guitar guy who learned songs when he was 12 and 14 and 15 would be farther ahead cognitively in looking at a poem than even some of the most well-trained private school kids you'd meet, because he'd actually intimately connected himself to the art of popular songs, which is a form of poetry. So we do like poetry. We like pop songs. We like hip hop. We like poetry slams and competitions, which is the tradition of the Beats from the 50s. It still goes on. What we don't like are the difficult poems we heard about in high school and college, which just floored us. They were just so complex, so ambiguous, so difficult that the students, when they think of those poems, they shudder. They're like, oh, it's like, oh my God, it's like a nightmare. It's as bad as the most difficult math problem or logic course, because they missed the point of the Donne poem, or they missed the point of the Stevens poem, or they missed the point of The Wasteland or something. Well, of course, these are difficult poems. Modernist poems are very difficult. 18th century poems are very difficult. They take enormous experience and repetition and skill to read with any joy or insight. So people get poetry phobia. They get poetry phobia. They go, I think I missed it. I saw the poem, let us go then you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. They read this, what? Insidious streets to argue with people with the strut. I don't know what. What's happening? Where am I? Those lines of Eliot are very powerful, but they're not transparent. Is it a normal comparison to compare the look of the sky with a patient etherized upon a table in the hospital? Isn't that a very difficult comparison? Isn't that one that's a tonal comparison? Is that a subtle, emotional comparison? It's not a literal, physical comparison. And people panic. They panic. I can't understand it. I'm missing it. There's something there. I'm missing the secret. Well, all of this is crazy. All of this is craziness. The poem, like a pop song, makes a statement, tells a story. You read it, you get what you can out of it, you put it together in your mind, and you leave it at that. And then as time goes by, you learn more about it, you have a better context, you think about it again, and you get public instruction or you read criticism, and as time goes on, you have a better idea. So what if it's mysterious at the beginning? Tell me those lines aren't entertaining. They're unforgettable. What person can forget those lines when they hear them, no matter what they mean? And Eliot said himself that even a poem in a foreign language you don't understand can be a good poem when you hear it, just because it sounds good. So let alone a poem you don't quite understand, you got to get rid of the poetry phobia. When I was a little boy, my parents read me poems. They read the poems out of the Golden Book of Poetry and Dr. Seuss. And then it came, and then it went from the Golden Book of Poetry and Dr. Seuss to Longfellow and the American poets of the 19th century, which are very reader-friendly poets. Whittier, Lowell, okay. Sometimes they're good poems, the fireside poets, it can be good or bad, but they're helpful for children. The story of Paul Revere, The Wreck of the Hesperus, unforgettable story poems for children. I never saw a purple cow. I never hope to see one, but I can tell you anyhow, I'd rather see than be one. That's the first poem I ever remember in my life. It was in this little golden book, and it had a purple cow and a purple man with purple paint on his glasses so that everything looked purple. And I read that poem, and I really liked it. I'd rather see than be one. Oh, that's so true, I thought. I'd rather see a purple cow than be one. That's brilliant. And I was like 4 or 5. And I thought, oh, that's great. And similarly, green eggs and ham, unforgettable when I was 6 or 7. I do not like green eggs and ham. I will not eat them. Sam, I am. Whatever that could possibly mean. It was so, in my mind, it was so brilliant and amazing. I would not eat them in the rain. I will not eat them on a train. I will not eat them in a house. I will not eat them with a mouse. This is not Dante or Shakespeare. But this is amazing to me when I was a little child. Why? Because everybody likes rhymes. Everybody likes rhythms. Everybody likes humor. Everybody likes something you can't forget. Who wants to live in a world where everything's forgotten and forgettable? So, the second cognitive thing that you build up in a child from when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, by reading aloud, having them read, repeat, memorize, is poetry. It has more cognitive complexity than prose because each syllable is organized in a very specific way. And that organization of syllables and those syntactical, those word order changes, and the use of rhyme and other functions produces a higher cognitive complexity and use than prose. Prose means regular sentences that we write in fiction or how-to books or whatever. So every child, if this is asked me, every child should know mathematics as the earliest possible time and poetry. Argument I'll leave for another day, but it's very important in this world to be able to argue in your mind or in public for what you think. And if you do not have the ability to do dialectic, organized thought about what you believe, you can never complete yourself as a citizen, as an interlocutor, as a friend. So that's for another day. We'll talk about arguments. But today it was math and poetry. And I wanted to make those comments because I've been asked so many times on that very issue.